Namaste. Welcome to our 24th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. You see, I'm warning you, we're still going to have more and talking about the mindset that is necessary. Sometimes you think, well, it's a lot of repetition and it sort of goes over and over the same ground. And it does and doesn't, because there's always a little layer of a new dimension there. But it's because it's so hard for us to get good sense into our minds, since everything in our environment is militated against really good sense, though it has a lot of mistaken sense substituted and called good sense. So we're ready now for the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna then asked Krishna, having considered all that has gone before in Krishna's teaching, you praise renunciation of actions, and again you praise karma yoga. In other words, you praise not doing, and then you praise doing. Which one is the better of these two? Tell me definitely. Well, the one that can keep my nose from itching, that's at the moment. Sorry, you guys. Okay, watch me. All right. So Krishna then said, renunciation of action and karma yoga, that is, acting in the correct way, in the correct consciousness, really, both lead to the highest happiness. Of the two, however, karma yoga is superior to renunciation of action. And that's because we can not do something, but our mind can be completely absorbed in that thing. You see, a lot of people do that. They think, well, it's bad, I shouldn't do this or that, but they think about it a lot. You see, and therefore they live in it. So in a subtle sense, they're doing it because, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the mind is everything. In fact, when he was asked to define the self, he said, the witness of the mind. So the self and the mind, see how they're bound up together. Of the two, however, karma yoga is superior to renunciation of action because it's an inner attitude. And since our basic life is inside us, that is the right action, positing our mind in the right perspective. He is a constant renouncer of action who neither dislikes nor desires, that is attracted to or repelled by external things, who is indifferent to the pairs of opposites. We've already talked about that. Truly, he is easily freed from bondage. Well, it means a person who's really totally there in that perspective, not just 80% there, but completely there. Now, there are different systems of philosophy in Sanatana Dharma. They're called the Darshanas. It's a very wise name because darshan means sight. So a darshana is the way someone sees something, but it's not implying that it is the truth. You see? Again, there's no such thing as truth, there is the true. No such thing as reality, there is the real. Therefore, even though it's a philosophy developed through centuries, written on, commented on, expounded by wise people, still, we have to understand it's just just a system of thought. So then he says, so there is, sorry, uh, there are the Darshanas. One is called Sankhya. That is really the oldest one. It's the oldest one we find in the philosophical writings of India. Sankhya was propounded by a great sage named Kapila. Later, he'll be mentioned here in the Bhagavad Gita. It is a cosmology and very much a personal cosmology. In other words, not just how the big universe operates, but how we operate as part of that universe. And yoga, the sadhana, the practices for interior development, evolution, and of clarity, and of ultimate knowledge, is based absolutely on Sankhya. That too is a darshana. That is written down in what we call the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. But that darshana is not fully comprehended without first knowing the Sankhya. But they go together. They should be, in our minds, inseparable. Therefore, Krishna says, the childish declare that Sankhya and Karma Yoga are different, but not the wise. They know, you see, they're one. If one is practiced correctly, that person finds the fruit of both. In other words, if you really believe in the Sankhya philosophy, then the way you will naturally then act will be itself yoga, karma yoga. If you desire karma yoga and you know the principles of karma yoga, when you follow it, you are living out the Sankhya philosophy. So, practically speaking, they turn out to be the same thing, like two sides of a coin. The realization that is attained by the followers of Sankhya is also attained by the followers of Karma Yoga. Karma and Sankhya and Karma Yoga are one, as I've explained, because they're one is theory, one is actualization, where you can't actualize something if you haven't known it as an idea first. Therefore, they're inseparable. He who perceives this truly perceives. He sees it with the right view. Indeed, renunciation is difficult to attain without karma yoga. In other words, you have to wean yourself off to attachment, and attachment to things, and attachment to particular actions. So you do that, you slowly loosen your addiction to and your involvement in action that is purely ego and matter based. And then when you do that, you'll be able to then drop the whole thing. It's like you need to learn something and it's in a book. You read the book, then you don't read the book anymore. You've got it already. So in a sense, there's Sankhya and there's Karma. And if you know Sankhya, you live according to Karma Yoga. And if you live according to Karma Yoga, you know Sankhya, all right? The yoga yoked sage quickly attains Brahman. In other words, it's the one who all day long unites his consciousness with the absolute principle of his own self. You see? In the beginning, says the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, as I've told you about three times already, There was nothing but the Purusha, the supreme being, no creation, no relative existence. And that being said first, it says his first Adi, his original speech word was Soham Asmi. I am Soham. But before he said Asmi, he said Soham. That's the first word. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Soham was in the beginning with God, but Soham is actually not just a designation of God, not just an explanation of God. God is, the absolute Brahman is Soham, the Soham consciousness. But sound and consciousness are interrelated. And therefore, the mantra Soham contains in itself the consciousness of Soham, the consciousness of Brahman. So, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that means that the whole picture has been given right there. Those who immerse themselves in Soham as a practice, those who continually join to their natural breath, which is through the nostrils, not the mind, not the mouth, through the natural breath, when the breath naturally, spontaneously comes in, the yogi mentally intones so, and when the breath naturally goes out, hum. Will you see that? Well, I messed that one up. So, hum, so, hum, so, hum. Um, I hope you don't mind that I don't get embarrassed by these things, but I've lived with myself a long time. I've come to expect it. So that's what it is. The mind is immersed first in the sound of Soham, and then the yogi begins to realize that it isn't just a sound, it is a state of being, a state of mind, a hum. See, I hum, I am that. I am that Soham, and it's called Soham Bhava. Absorption in the consciousness of Soham and the very knowledge, Soham, I am that. Therefore, those who know the divine word Soham become the divine Soham or are revealed as the divine Soham because they've already been that. You and I have been born so many times on earth, all kinds of forms. We've been everything. We were mosquitoes, we've been monkeys, we've been worms, we've been lizards, we've been all this, and we've been horses and buffaloes, and it went on and on. And then all kinds of human beings of all kinds of traits and cultures and so on. But one thing was constant, the witness, that witness of the mind Sri Ramakrishna talked about. And that is what we always will be because we were all those things and then we stopped being them. And you can stop that constant coming, going by finally hitting home base and knowing Tatwamasi, thou art that, or Tat Aham, I am that, Sa Aham, I am that reality. Yoga yoked with the lower self purified, with the lower self subdued, and it's only done by yoga, I assure you. And I mean Soham yoga. Other kinds of yogas, they kind of put a Novocaine, kind of a deadening effect or a momentarily sleep effect or dormancy, but the thing stays there. And then after a while, it wakes up again. And then you find out you're back at the beginning. You never have moved. It's a terrible, awful realization, but it happens to be the truth. That's why Sri Gajanana Maharaj kept talking so much about the misfortune of fake yogis, fake gurus, and fake yoga. Because what doesn't realize the truth is obviously fake. All right. Yoga yoked with the lower self purified, with the lower self subdued, because we do have a higher and lower aspect, whose senses are conquered. In other words, not conquered like, oh, I beat them down. They're completely controlled. Like a wild horse, you can't ride. But when you tame the horse, then you could ride. Whose self has become the self of all beings. That's extremely interesting, you see? That it doesn't mean you suddenly realize, well, I'm the only one here. All this looks like 100 people are in this room, but really there's just me in this room. No. We have to oftentimes use the language of the blind to convey what we want to the blind. And we're the blind, and we are using these expressions. So we have to realize the reality that is me is a reality in everything, and therefore I bow to everything, not say, well, I need not bow. You have those types of Indians. They won't even say namaste to you or to bow down to anybody. Well, that's the motto of the Russian mafia. Do you want to be that? In fact, some of those people act like the Russian mafia. I know. I've been there. So, but you realize the reality in me is a reality in all, and therefore I bow to that all, and I honor that all. He is not tainted even when acting, because his mind is with that which is taintless, the divine self. I do not do anything. Now, again, this doesn't mean turning into kind of like a zombie, like, well, I'm sitting inside watching a movie, but well, I let me not jump the gun on this. I do not do anything. Thus thinks the steadfast knower of truth while seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, breathing, speaking, releasing and holding, opening and closing his eyes, convinced that it is the senses that move among the sense objects. In other words, this is a mistake. Doing all these kind of things, he comes to understand this is all the action of Shakti, of energy, of Prakriti, of the covering. But the light that is the essence inside that covering, that am I. And that I doesn't have to go through any of this. Yes. Don't try to comprehend it utterly through rationality, because our present state is so limited that if we try too hard to work it out and define it, we're almost sure to get a wrong idea. Therefore, the best thing is to say, whatever it may be, soham asmi. I am soham, and with every breath, soham. Then, as the little boy said in the tree, in Mother Anandamayi's vision I mentioned previously, he said, having filled your mind, go to the abode, having filled your mind with Ram, go to the abode of Ram. Having filled your mind with Soham, go to that supreme Soham that is self-existent and beyond all things else. In fact, besides which, there is nothing real or permanent. So let's backtrack. I do not do anything, thus thinks the steadfast knower of truth, while seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, releasing, holding, opening and closing his eyes, convinced that it is the senses that move among the sense objects. Offering actions to Brahman in a sense that, well, this is all Brahman's dream, so I'll go down the dream path and I'll interact on the dream path. But really, ultimately, I know he and he alone is the goal, and he and he alone ultimately is the doer. Therefore, as it said, he acts untainted by evil, as the lotus leaf is not wetted by water. He isn't touched by these things. I don't mean doing wrong and pretending that you've gotten such a great deal of self realization won't touch you. One of the biggest, most outrageous phonies of the yoga boom days, which was also the so called hip druggy days, uh, went to a yoga center where, in fact, I had been. And my friends who lived there told me later that he'd come in and he just lit up. He lit up some marijuana and started puffing on it. They said to him, "Well, yogis, yogis don't really do that thing. We know there are people in India who are drug addicts who then say they're yogis." And he said, "Doesn't matter what you do as long as you're centered." Well, he's right. If you're centered, you're in the self, and then you only do what you ought to do. And he, by the fact he was doing what he oughtn't, he wasn't centered. He was just speaking hypocritical nonsense. All right. And I think that that is where we must come to the end. Thank you. Thank you again. Please excuse. I'd love to say the mind stutters never going to say. I can't even say stutter. I say stutter. I'm sorry. The mind stutter is never really going to stop. So just if you can overlook it, I would appreciate it, because that which comes from the Gita, not that which necessarily comes from here for me, is divine liberating truths. So next time we can continue on the path of this liberation.